made up. That's an extra level of imposter when you're like, Famous Sharron. Oh, we haven't even gotten to her story, but I made her up for a gig that was not... Everyone else had left Perth, so there was no one else left to do this gig. So I said, I'll do the gig. I'm months out. And then they were doing a Hollywood gala, big martini glasses, Marilyn Monroe impersonators. And I was like, do you want me to do a character? Because I think I'm pretty casual. And they're like, we didn't know you did characters. And I said, no, I don't, but I will. So, how did Famous Sharron start? I made her up. She was a talent agent. In fact, I didn't even make her up. The producer, she said, what kind of character? I said, she has to be Australian because I'm sick of people just being from anywhere except Perth. I was like, I want her to be from Morley Galleria. She is a queen of Morley Galleria.
Awesome.
And she's from WA. She's suburban. She's not bogan. There's a little bit of bogan in all of us, but she's suburban, She's proud of it. And she is the queen of it. She's all over it.
Do you have an alter ego? Bonnie Davies does, and it's the one and only WA Glambassador Famous Sharron, who has become the unforgettable face of regional Western Australia. Bonnie is a creative director, award-winning producer and comedian, and she's got a mission in life to make things unboring. So you're in for a treat today as Bonnie gives us a backstage pass into the highs and lows of her career in the WA comedy and festival scene and how Famous Sharron was born. She takes us on a personal journey of defining success and the guts and the glamour that lie beneath this. I'm Sonia Nolan and welcome to My Warm Table, a Western Australian independent podcast aimed at building empathy and perspective by welcoming an eclectic and expert range of guests around a warm table of curiosity, acceptance and positivity. Please take a seat at the table with Bonnie and I and prepare for a very unboring conversation. Bonnie, thank you so much for taking some time out of your crazy busy schedule to come and sit around My Warm Table and just reflect on the year that's been for you.
Yeah, it has been a big year. Although I was saying to you earlier, I do love attention, so this is a great setup for me.
Well, as I said, I love people who like to talk about themselves because that's exactly what I want to hear around the warm table today. So, Bonnie, and you've got so much that you can share with us. So I'm really keen to get into some of the glamour and guts of what goes on in
Glamour and guts. That's
a
great way to describe it. Yeah, that's actually on point. That's brilliant.
Well, and when I say guts, I'm meaning courage, because the courage that you've got to keep going in the environment that, has been for the last few years with the pandemic and being a creative in Western Australia, that's taken an enormous amount of courage to keep going and just, finding a path through it, which you definitely have.
Yeah, that's funny. When you said guts, I thought of the mess of it. Do you know that?
Yeah. Well, there's
it's like the mess and the miracle because, we're all guts inside as well, but also we're incredible people that function in the world and do things.
Absolutely, yeah.
But there's glamour and there's guts. I guess it took guts, but also I didn't really feel like there was even a point earlier this year, around June or July, where for a moment I thought everything was going to come back. So what happened in February is the borders opened and I lost all my work from February till May. All over again. It was like 2020 but without JobKeeper, and it was a real shock to me. Wow. I was preparing to lose a month of work. I thought, I'll get COVID, I have to cancel a bunch of gigs. But the whole of WA just cancelled itself.
It just didn't know what to do when the borders
opened. And we hadn't
open.
really had it in that way before, so I totally understand. And I think it was, people needed to do what they needed to do, but it impacted me directly, immediately. But in June, July, I thought, I made a plan with my business manager. We made a plan to get through to June, end of financial year, and then we'll reassess. And that plan meant scratching my wage right down so that I could keep my staff employed, really living very tightly and on the edge. And also I did some CEO coaching to bring extra money in to make sure I could keep my staff on board and not fire anyone. Really went to ground. And June was a busy month. And then I thought, great, by July we'll be set for the rest of the year. And July, it still hadn't come back. It was like a hose spurting. Do you know like the sprinklers that aren't
Yes.
quite watering properly?
Yeah, I
They're
know
like,
those.
it's like, it's kind of watering the garden, I think. I don't know if this is working. That was what my career was still like. And I really had a moment. I was like, I've been through years of just working towards the next thing, waiting till the vaccine, waiting till this happens. Then the borders open. I was just working towards this. And then it got to July and I actually looked up CEO jobs. I was like,
Wow. Yeah.
what's my other options? Because I have to actually start considering how long can I put off my superannuation or buying a house or just living properly, because I was still not paying myself properly. I'm still not paying myself a full wage. We've got the money coming in now, but I'm just holding off until January when we've got time because we've been so busy,
Yes.
which is great.
Yeah.
So it's not, it's amazing now, abundant, but I need to make still cautious decisions because I could get COVID or who knows. I did look at what would it look like if I wasn't doing this anymore, and it only took 5 minutes of looking at other roles, and I was like, oh no, I can make much more doing Famous Sharron, and like I can have much more fun, and I don't want to give up on that yet. But just a bit of a reality check of, can we keep going? Because this is really exhausting. So I don't know if it was guts, but or just it was my career. I don't think that is what people fully fathomed when, there was someone who she would play one of the witches in Wicked, and she had to become a real estate agent. And if you just imagine walking away, if you're listening to this now, walking away from the career that you have, the networks, the connections, the experience, and just starting fresh somewhere else.
Something completely different.
The wage doesn't match, what you've been expecting. Your experience and skills, sure, they might transfer, but it's not what you've known. Energy. It's not what you even want to be doing. And actually, you're really good at your other job.
Yeah.
It just doesn't exist right now. That's quite a big thing to walk away from. But yeah, if you do go and see a performer or you see a show or you see a musician, give them extra love. Because, I was on the edge of bankruptcy, but I stayed in the game anyway and thought maybe I can work my way back out of this situation. A lot of people lost houses or lost their life's work in that time. So if they're up there doing something now, that's probably taking a lot for them.
Yeah,
everyone's situations are markedly different though. But I am proud of the lessons that I learned, and I'm really proud of how I handled it. And
what are some of the lessons that you learnt through it?
I think there's so many. Trying to do everything, your capacity, and definitely I was very proud of how our team handled everything.
So tell me about Gelo, because that is, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Bonnie, that Gelo.
You almost called me Sharon, and I
did
love that.
almost call you Sharon. I know. I've got
fine.
I know. I might occasionally just drop that into, and I know it's Sharon with 2 R's. So I've done my research.
One of them
here.
silent. Thank you.
One of them silent. I love it. Gelo is an ancient Greek word which means laughter. Is that right?
Yeah.
Gelos.
Gelos.
Yes.
Yeah. We were renaming the company and trying to find something that captured the energy of what we did. And then I found that word and was like,
perfect.
And no one's used it. Amazing. Because, comedy companies, there's so many. And we did more than comedy too, which is now, we talk about, we create unboring experiences.
Yeah. Do you have any stats on why we should laugh more? Is there, is there any philosophy of laughter and philosophy of fun that's your mantra?
Especially in a corporate setting, when we do it in corporate work, if you can make a whole room laugh, for that moment, the whole room is on the same page. And how often can you say that? That your whole company's on the same page, that your whole team is on the same page. You can fake laughter, but you can tell when people are faking it.
Yeah.
And if you're naturally making a room laugh, they are connected in that moment. So really, that was the power of it, is that you've got everyone on the same page. If they're laughing and they're learning, they are, because you can hear it, you can feel it. I guess the unboring stuff, I made up the word unboring because I was trying to describe what we did. And it was really about boring things, like there's boring things in the world, and unboring was the word that I created. The reason is because things get boring, especially when we have to do them.
Very true.
We have to have a meeting, or we have to sign this document, or we have to have this contract, or we have to. And suddenly, as soon as we have to, they just become boring because it's like, well, we've got to do it anyway. And we forget why we're even doing them. And so I think really the core of the unboring philosophy or the approach is just thinking about why are you actually doing it in the first place? And then are you achieving that? And if you're not, let's fix that. And usually the way you fix it is the same way that you make it unboring. Because if it's relevant and interesting and funny or engaging, it's no longer boring, and then it's achieving its purpose. That's the kind of approach that we had.
And when I met you, Sharron, which was about July this year, Sharron,
Yeah.
I've done it.
No,
I've
it's
done
fine.
it.
Honestly,
Bonnie.
call me whatever you want. Never call Sharron Bonnie, but
no,
call
she'll
me
get
whatever
right.
you like. Yeah.
So does Sharron get a bit upset when she gets called Bonnie?
It just doesn't make sense. It
She
shocks.
says, I don't know who you're talking about. Yeah.
People don't know I exist. If you go on any of Famous Sharron's social media or website, I'm not there.
Yeah, right.
And I purposely keep myself out of it.
Yeah.
Because people connect to her so strongly, and I love that. So,
yeah. And we'll talk a little bit about Famous Sharron in a little while. We'll give her, she can have
she
a
would
moment.
prefer we talk more.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, she can just sit for a moment, and I want to talk about Bonnie. The work that you were doing through Gelo was some comedy, yes. And that's what I was reflecting on, how I met you about July this year at a gathering. And part of your whole mantra in life is about making things unboring, which I love that word. Love that you've even made up a word called unboring. And you did make things unboring. You just added this beautiful little warm spark into the conversations at the gathering.
Oh, thank you.
And intrigued me immediately. I was thinking, who is that woman that is just making everyone feel so comfortable and really trying to help everyone connect in a really meaningful yet light way? You just walk this beautiful path of bringing people together in warmth, but with this light laughter. So I just wanted to reflect that back to you, that it helped me in this gathering because I didn't really know many people. So it was just lovely to have your unboringness in there.
That is so lovely. I had and when you reached out for the podcast, I think you mentioned it on the day, I was so honoured. I know what a big deal it is to put a podcast together, but that's so lovely. I had no idea.
Good.
And it's interesting. I think that I love people. I really love people, and I love the way that we can connect to each other. And I grew up in like a community of lots of people in my house all the time, but I never thought that was anything special about me. I actually thought I was quite a boring person when I was a kid. I was reading my old journals recently because I've been digitizing them to just get them out of my house. And I thought, I don't want to throw them away, but no one else is going to want these. So I'll digitize them and take photos of them. And and that really came up as a strong theme when I was a teenager. And actually, I think it's one of the special things about me, what I've learned to value now. And really, Famous Sharron is built off connection and engagement and really caring about people.
I suspect she's an only child. She's got
that
sort of only child thing going about her.
She's absolutely an only child. And it took a while for her to be conceived, so she's very spoiled. And,
there you go.
Yeah, she's had a great life.
Oh, I love it. So tell me about your growing up then. Tell me about your life in Perth. You're a Perth girl, Bonnie,
Perth, and I chose to stay in Perth as well, which was, I think I've made a lot of decisions throughout my life, or I've felt like I'm going off track. I'm not intentionally. It's just kind of who I am. Actually, and that's another thing. When I was starting to do stand up, we've been talking about imposter syndrome before.
Yes. Yeah.
I got into stand up by accident, which is a whole other story. I was running festivals, and then I came across comedy, and I was trying to help them. I was like, you need more posters, you need to do this. And then I made a bet to do stand-up, and then I just loved it, and it was terrifying. I'd never been so terrified in my life, so I thought, I should just keep doing this.
Because it's terrifying. Yeah, why not?
It's exciting. I'd never had such a high, like skydiving. It was like that. But I loved people, and I wasn't depressed or alcoholic or which was really the theme. It's different now. There's a real range of comedians around, but the really successful ones then, there's lots of articles coming out about alcoholism and depression. And I went to Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and my favourite shows were people that had huge mental health problems or hated people, or they were just like, that was the theme.
Yeah, right.
And I still remember it now, walking down the cobble streets thinking, I'm in the wrong industry. Like, I don't think I fit here.
Because I'm a bit positive and I
like
people.
Yeah. And then I thought, well, if I can make that funny, then that'll be my point of difference.
Yeah, nice.
And so then that is what's happened. And that is Famous Sharron, like that she loves people and she's optimistic, you know, to a delusional point in a way, but also somehow that kind of works for her. It's amazing. And she's taught me things too, you know. She's taught me to self-care. So I used to be able to go to gigs, you know, after working nonstop and trying to run a company, and I was doing lots of things for other people all the time, that was a big lesson as well, learning to not try and fix everyone else's problems. I couldn't do that to her because I couldn't rock up to a gig exhausted and be her.
Because she's high energy.
High energy. Yeah. She's on point. Her costumes were terrible. My makeup, I had no skills, which is, you know, a whole other thing. I felt like I'm not qualified to do a character. Why am I doing this? But I had to rest. I had to prepare. I had to give myself space. And then that meant I had to make a whole lot of other decisions about not spending all my energy on other people or not trying to fix everybody else. And, you know, which I think that's one of the lessons COVID taught me, is those old demons are all there. You know, those core kind of channels in me came back really hard, which might link back to, you know, my childhood growing up, as my parents are youth workers. So we grew up with like lots of kids and people who didn't have a home or were displaced. And back then, the agencies that were around were often religious-based or very restrictive in terms of, from what I hear from my parents, around, you know, whether you could stay there or not.
Right.
You know, you couldn't be on drugs or alcohol, even if you've just literally just escaped. Of course, you're probably drinking if you've just escaped an abusive home or something horrible. But you weren't allowed to do that. You had to kind of come in clean and be sorted out, or you had to be not gay, or you had to have all these things to be even cared for. So there was a network of people. My parents were part of it, so there's a bunch of other people doing this. Back then, real estate was a bit different, so people had spare rooms and big houses. Yeah. And so if you had a spare room, you'd take a kid, or you'd have kids come and crash on your couch, and there was a network of people doing it. So my parents were in that network.
Wow. So you always had extra brothers and sisters floating around the place?
Always, yeah. I remember someone talking about, oh, isn't it great on holidays? I can just walk around in my underwear and do whatever. And I was like, oh, I would never. I would never. We literally had an open door policy. Like the door was always open. Yeah. Which I loved. I loved people.
That
so it's always someone at the kitchen table and generosity, and also like complete lack of boundaries. You know, my parents did give so much, and that is wonderful, but there is also a point where they do need to look after themselves. You know, sometimes my mum would work so hard she'd end up just in bed for a day or two. She's just so exhausted. So I've learned definitely that I still love that generosity and that compassion, and I love my parents are amazing, but also have learned that it's okay to have boundaries as well. You know? Yeah.
Wow. So they're huge lessons growing up, like huge background of care and compassion and loving people and absolutely meeting all walks of life as well by the sound of it.
We're all the same.
We are.
You know, Mum, we have so much more in common. Mum would always say, you know, what a lot of kids that used to live with us, they just wanted parents to love them. Yeah, my dad used to say actually that everybody has an emotional bank balance. So when you're born with it, and then as you grow older, you know, it gets, you know, like a long-term deposit. You build it up and you get interest. And he said a lot of people who don't have the same privileges or opportunities or families, you know, they sometimes can be born with a negative bank balance, and then maybe the people they're hanging out with have got negative balances too. So how do you even grow an emotional bank balance or capacity if you've got no one around you to learn from or to role model on? Or, do you know, that's why like people in the community can have such a big impact. We have to borrow from each other to learn. We learn so much from each other. So even sharing knowledge or kindness can have a real impact on people and their confidence and what they think they can do.
Oh, I totally agree. And it's interesting that, you know, you talk about community, you talk about that sort of grassroots as well. I was, you know, doing my little bit of reflection on you and the sort of things that I wanted to cover in our chat today. And what kept coming up for me was community, the value of community events. Like you've been involved in Awesome Arts, in Big Day Out. You've been part of Western Australian Music WAM. You've been part of Smarter Than Smoking, Creative Challenge, the Red Bull Air Race. So all these events that, you know, are really well known for a lot of Western Australians that bring people together in a sense of, you know, real spirit of community and excitement and fun. And also your love of regional Western Australia and your
I love
your
regional
profile.
WA.
I know, and that's what keeps coming back to me is this community, grassroots, get in there and just be part of it and just show this laughter and love of connection. So they're just some of the things that just kept resonating for me as I was learning more about you, Bonnie. So I'd love your reflections on, you know, the value of community events.
The reason I stayed in Perth and the reason that I love regional WA and the reason people and all those things that I think it's a little bit Sharron's, you know, the world is your catwalk. Like, look at what you have around you.
Yeah.
Do you know, we always want to, I think in Perth we have an inferiority complex of like, oh, you've got to be from London or New York to, you know, and we try and create, you know, fashion walkways that might compete with them. Let's put our walkway in the Pilbara. Like, let's put our walkway down the side of a bridge and have people doing fashion catwalks. So, you know, let's do something that's us. And so community is just an extension of that because that's on my catwalk. Like, this is here. And I never felt like Perth was boring when I was a kid. I had a pretty random childhood, really. At the time I didn't know, but also I was with a whole lot of people that used to play guitar and chat, and, you know, we would make fun where we went, and I felt like it was such a waste to look at Perth and call it boring and not do anything about it. So I guess that's the fix-it side of me. When I was a kid, we created a magazine called Square One with Awesome Festival,
Right?
Because I used to see little magazines come from Melbourne or Sydney, and, you know, you'd see all these cool things come from other places. I was like, well, we can make one.
Yes, yeah.
An Awesome Festival, they were quite magical in a way, awesome at the time. The director there said, here's some kids that have some creativity, and he brought us into the office and he said, you can use our office. Which at the time, when you're a kid, you actually don't have a space to hang out that isn't your own.
That's right.
It's your parents'
Your bedroom,
home.
yeah.
It's the public shopping centre. It's someone else's library.
So how old were you then?
15.
15, okay.
Yeah, so for him to just say, here's a space in our office where you can come meet and it's your space for a couple hours every week and you can create whatever you want. And no workshop, do you know, it was undirected.
Yeah, you
self-directed.
Didn't have a facilitator.
Yeah, we had no
facilitators,
facilitators, which I think is like quite amazing of him to say that, to say just go for it, just do what you want to do. And so we created Square One, a little magazine. I still every now and then I meet people who have a copy. We could only afford to print 1,000, so we called them limited edition.
Yeah, as you do, yeah.
As you do. And it was really fun, and I guess that spawned the rest of my career and how I kept doing things as well, is that we feel like things are unattainable or we need a gatekeeper or we have to ask permission, but there's so many things that we can do with the resources that we have. And also people in Perth are amazing. Like they're amazing. They're beautiful, and we can celebrate that. There's a event we do every year called Beach Ball, actually, where a friend and I, we'd made a giant Scrabble set just for fun, because you kind of do make your own fun. I remember a friend from Sydney said, why do Perth people love costume parties? And I was like, I don't know. I think we just had to make something happen.
I didn't even know that was unique to Perth.
Apparently it is. She went to a barbecue and she was like, Bonnie, there were 15 people and 4 of them were Oompa Loompas. Like, what is going on? It's not enough people there to warrant Oompa Loompa. Like, that's full body paint.
And a whole progressive dinner on a bike wearing a onesie.
Oh,
like,
yes!
Yes,
oh
like, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't know why people think that's weird.
And I think that's great. And I love that we're embracing that now. And so we made a giant Scrabble set, and just for fun. It was a lot more work than we thought, but we got there in the end. And then we were playing with that, and then we're adults now. I think we're about 19 or 20 or something. And I was like, yeah, we can. So weird. Like, we can drive ourselves around. We do whatever we want. We could wear ball gowns to the beach if we wanted. We could have a champagne on the beach. We could wear ball gowns. We could go swimming in our ball gowns if we wanted. We could do that. We could do that. And so we were like, let's do that. And so I think it was 30 of us, and we got down onto the foreshore at City Beach, and we just kind of cheersed the sunset, and then we paraded into the ocean, and it was just joyful. Like it was so fun, and I still can't believe how we're on to our 15th one, 14th one now, 14 years. So now hundreds of people come. And it's all unorganised. Like there's just literally my parents put on a barbecue and I play some music with Luke and Wyatt, play a little DJ stuff, but it's all and I provide the music stuff.
When does this happen?
28th of December.
Oh, so it's coming up.
Yeah, it's coming up. Feel free to join.
So tell me, so where is it? Which
City Beach.
City
if you
Beach.
Drive down, you see Clancy's, look to your right and then go to the furthest car park away. Get there for 6 p.m. Don't be fashionably late because it all happens very quickly. 6 p.m, then the sun goes down around 7. We do a big group photo and then we parade into the ocean and that's it.
So you parade, you don't run like cold nips.
We kind of do run.
Like,
yeah, we kind of parade run. We do like a little parade thing and then, and every year it felt like I've been washed in happiness.
Tell me more about Regional WA, Bonnie, because you did this amazing video for Geraldton. I laughed and I laughed. It is just such a great take on Gero.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was really fun. Well, Sharron, actually we saw someone from Tourism WA, or Tourism WA, as Sharron would call it.
That's right. The
WA. Do a talk about the tiers of areas they promote, and there's like the 4 main tiers, like Broome and Exmouth and Margaret River and etc. And then there's the 2nd tier and 3rd tier. And I was like, oh, that's where Sharron gets all her work, is the 3rd tier. Like there's so much to WA. We're so vast that it's strategic, and I understand Tourism WA have to focus their resources. That's quite clever. But then there's all these places that actually have really cool things going on. When we were doing the tourism videos, it's a partnership with Art on the Move. They wanted to really showcase a side of each place. So we were doing all the places that people traditionally wouldn't want to visit. So Geraldton, Katanning, Collie, and the next one's Kalgoorlie Boulder.
Cool, yeah.
And trying to show the other side, but also honouring the perceptions that people have. You know, Geraldton, it's a fuel stop to most people.
Yeah.
Like, why would they have stopped? And then showing them some of the things that are there. But for me, I think the thing that I've learnt, even just through doing the videos and just through touring so much through Regional WA, is to chat to the locals. Because if you ask someone in a local shop or an independent shop, what is there to do, what's happening, there's always so many things that aren't on anything. There's like someone's got an opening party or a launch, or there's an exhibition, or there's something going on. There's a weird market, or there's, you know, people have so many DIY things happening in the country. And if you ask the locals, they might even just take you out. Do you know,
oh, absolutely.
Sharron was roving along for Bunbury Fringe, met some people at the pizza store, literally eating pizza. And then the next day, one of them took her out on a plane.
Oh, wow.
Flying over. I mean, she's a bit famous, so that helps. But
well, it does. That's right. You can't really miss her. In fact, it's probably a good time to actually introduce who Famous Sharron is, because we've sort of talked around her and we did say she had to wait. But we've mentioned her a few times now. So how would you describe Famous Sharron, apart from she's your alter ego?
So she's very famous for nothing at all. Doesn't mean that she's not got talent, but none of it's that useful.
I disagree on that one. Put that one.
She's funny, she's famous, and she's fabulous. They're the 3 words that I think of for her.
And she's quite extravagant, isn't she?
She's very glamorous.
She's very glamorous.
Glamour and guts. I'm the guts. She's the glamour. Wow. That's a realisation. That's true.
She's a little bit Dame Edna.
Oh, absolutely. Dame Edna without the talent. Yeah. That's a huge honour. She's been compared to Dame Edna from the outset, I think, because of the big frocks and the glasses and the hair and everything, which has always been an honour for me. I'm like, wow, that's an Australian icon. So, yeah. And so when people say that, she says, oh, yes, but without the talent.
Without the talent. I love it.
Not required.
And she is this larger-than-life character who just brings joy and energy and volume.
Much, yeah.
To wherever you are. So how was Famous Sharron born? Because I believe she turns 10 this year.
Yes, she does.
Yes.
Yeah, she's officially 42, but 10 years of being famous. She was an accident. So I was doing stand-up as me, and I'll try and give you like a short-ish version, but essentially I'd done okay as me. I'm surrounded by much more successful people all the time.
I just want to take a step back because, again, in my little, sort of stalking of you, Bonnie, 2011 was a really big year for you from what I can gather.
Yeah.
In that Edinburgh Fringe Festival.
Yeah.
You won
the best comedy show
at Fringe World.
Yeah,
at Fringe World in that same year. And you also created Famous Sharron in 2012, a year later. You also had a YouTube video that went viral in 2011, which was about breaking up with Google.
Oh, did I? Oh, I didn't go viral.
Well, it
should have been a faster edit. I should have edited that myself. That was a good lesson.
There you go. But that was about breaking up with Google. It was hilarious because
you've really researched.
Look, I
this
do
is
my
amazing.
research. I do my research.
I wouldn't even know how to find that video.
You just Google Bonnie Davies.
Well, I've never
Googled yourself. But the breaking up with Google, it just still resonates today because in that video you talk about the fact that you're following me and you know everything about me. You've got my number, but I don't have your phone number. And it's all still so topical today in 2022.
It's quite amazing, actually.
Yeah, isn't it? You were ahead of your time.
Who knew?
But so I just wanted to take that little vignette moment to just say that while yes, Famous Sharron, has certainly taken off, but she's got some pretty strong shoulders that she's standing on. So let's just really clear.
Yeah, she did benefit. I mean, I guess I won that award, but I didn't. I think awards are fickle. Like they're very useful, and that was useful for me. But also, what your work is and what you want it to be. And the award was for a show that was about my family and growing up, because when I was writing it I was like, oh, what should I write my second show about? I know, I'll the first one was called Laugh or Your Money Back, because I just thought I want people to come and
laugh.
Know that if they don't laugh they can have their money back. No harm. They don't know who I am. So that's how I'm going to roll. And that was a really fun show. It was all my best stuff, so that's quite good. It takes a while to find the good jokes. The second show I was like, wow, where do I start? What do I write about? I thought, write about what you know. I'll write about my family, all the bank robberies and all the things, like all the funny stories that we had. They're all funny. And then as I was writing it, I got halfway. I'd already booked the slot at Fringe and already had the promo rolling out and was finishing it and realised, oh, that's only part of the story, because the other part is all the people that died and all the sadness and all the hard stuff. So then the show had to be more about that, which was a real shock for me and made it much harder to finish. And in fact, I don't really feel like I'd finished it until a year later, because I spent a year touring it and then pulling it out and making it better and better. And finally got there. So it was a powerful show and it was funny and it was heartfelt, and I think that's probably why it won the award, is it was uniquely me.
What was that one called?
I'm High on Life, What Are You On? Oh. Yeah. So because, a lot of people were on drugs or on different things around me. And I think I remember someone asking me, what are you on? And I was like, I'm high on life.
I love it. What a great title. Yeah.
And I was. I think people often think I'm a born-again Christian because I'm quite optimistic or happy. I mean, my dad is a minister, but none of us are religious.
So I'm High on Life, What Are You On? Was 2011.
So that was the show
the one
that
won
won
the Fringe.
And so then I was conflicted because I'd kind of created not a stand-up show, so I hadn't really lent into the storytelling of it, but I hadn't really lent into the stand-up side of it, so I felt very in between. Yeah, I got convinced by other people to take it to Edinburgh because you've got to keep, it could win more awards, and I'd made good money off the season at Fringe, so I did. I'd been to Edinburgh twice before as an open micer, but it was the wrong decision for me.
What way?
I took too many things on. I was still really relatively new. Yeah, it just was a lot, and I lost a lot of money and came back kind of financially and emotionally ruined.
Wow.
And I just thought, oh, that's not success. Like, I know from the outside that looks like success because I did a tour and I had a great time.
I think it's so interesting how you say, what is success, because I think that's something that a lot of us all struggle with, because there is the external understanding of what success looks like for other people.
Yeah.
But what does it feel like for you as a human, what success is,
Absolutely.
And I've redefined that 100 times over in my life, and I know I will continue to, because it is something that should be actually a personal definition. and nobody else has got the right to tell you what success actually should be.
No, and they're not living it or feeling it.
No.
Do you know, when you're successful, you feel it. And when you're unsuccessful, you feel it.
Big time.
And they talk about how important failure is, but no one talks about how painful it is. Because absolutely it's important and you learn so much, but wow, it hurts. So I think the self-care or the ways that you can handle failure is a part of that conversation that I don't hear much. It's like, how do you cope?
Yeah.
Who do you call? Like, who do you, when you feel like you're about to fail or you are failing, like, how do you reconcile it? How do you process it? And then how do you build yourself up again?
Yeah.
What are those things? Because that's a part of learning and growing, and it happens, and God, it hurts. Like,
It really does. And there are moments in time where it just feels, I call it the great unraveling, where everything just seems to unravel at the same time.
Yeah.
And you just seem to be spiraling down into something that you're not sure where, and you don't know who your safe people are.
Yeah.
It's
you
tough.
can have things really cycle.
Yeah.
I think that's why, I'm having a really amazing time right now. And also I've had a lot of success in the last couple of months. A lot of great things are happening rapidly and often, even when it was hard during COVID. I'm getting lots of huge successful things happening. I was talking to a friend the other day, and she's had a really good run with a project she's doing, getting acclaim and all sorts of things. She's like, yeah, I've just got to make sure it doesn't get to my head. I'm just kind of talking about that, like, oh, how do I manage my ego and how do I whatever. And I was like, wow, I'm like so beyond that in so many ways, and that I don't try to manage my ego anymore because I know the world will. It's made up. That's an extra level of imposter when you're like, Famous Sharron. We haven't even gotten to her story, but I made her up for a gig that was not, everyone else had left Perth, so there was no one else left to do this gig. So I said, I'll do the gig. I'm months out. And then they were doing a Hollywood gala, big martini glasses, Marilyn Monroe impersonators. And I was like, do you want me to do a character? Because I think I'm pretty casual. And they're like, we didn't know you did characters. And I said, no, I don't, but I will. Like, so, how did Famous Sharron start? I made her up. She was a talent agent. Like, in fact, I didn't even make her up. The producer, she said, oh, what kind of character? I said, she has to be Australian, because I'm sick of people just being from anywhere except Perth. I was like, I want her to be from Morley Galleria. Like, she is a queen of Morley Galleria.
Awesome.
And she's from WA. She's suburban. She's not bogan. There's a little bit of bogan in all of us, but she's suburban, she's... and
proud of it.
And proud of it. And she is the queen of it. Like, she's all over it. And she has to change outfits all the time. That was the two things. And they said, we'll make her a talent agent. I was like, perfect. So for the first 6 months, she was a talent agent from Morley Galleria. And she wasn't really a thing. But, I made her up. She's pretend.
And Sharron being the quintessential Australian name, is that where you went with that?
Yeah. That just felt right.
Shazza.
I spelt it wrong the first time. It was Sharron with one R. Fixed that.
Oh, fix that.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it wasn't until... So I did the Edinburgh Fringe and just was exhausted. I'd done Sharron once, but the reaction was just incredible.
Huge.
Like, people really got it. They were yelling for her throughout the show. I just never had a reaction like that before. And it felt good. So... I took her to Sydney a few years ago, and she video bombed Sunrise, got on the background of Sunrise, and went to Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, the opening night, and they ended up bringing her up on stage. People wanted photos with her afterwards. I was like, oh wow, this works in any city. This character works anywhere. But then obviously I flew home, so it's interesting that just the different networks. She might have been on TV sooner, or all those kind of things. But also I've been able to work her through and work myself through a lot more. But because she is a multidimensional character, not just on screen, that means that my decisions are things that she has to live. So it makes it a little bit more complicated.
Yeah,
it's simple, but it's just a bit more. It has to be really solid, because she has to stand up in every dimension.
Yeah.
She can't break character. And people hang out with her quite a lot, or they really get to know her. So it was just a bit more for me to kind of consider. So there was and I wasn't as confident on camera, which I've fixed now, as you would see.
I love it.
But if you go back through, I've left a lot of the old shit up. So if you want to scroll back, there's some really bad videos of Famous Sharron. Voice is different. Everything's really...
But that's great to see the evolution.
I left
of
it up
her,
on purpose because I think
yeah.
that if someone else is wanting to do something like that, then they should see how it started. Like,
yes.
And also it doesn't matter because it's behind me now, do you know?
Yeah.
So she's going to keep rolling forward. I really do feel like WA really lift her and back her, which is so special. Like, that'll never not be, no one else can take that. Like, that's pretty amazing. So it's been a longer road, but it feels very fruitful right now.
I just feel that Famous Sharron is probably going to be around for a really long time. I think you've done so much work.
Well, she's mostly
on her.
plastic, and that lasts millions of years.
It does, isn't it? Exactly right. It does.
She's never leaving.
She's never going. She doesn't even biodegrade or anything.
No.
You know, you've done so much work on her, with her. You know who she is in the sense of, like you've said, you know, that connection with people, and you want her to live her values. You want her to be this iconic person that people can connect with.
I want her to be a worldwide superstar.
Yeah,
but I still want her to go to Morley Galleria.
Yeah.
Like, I love that idea that she'll be internationally famous but still turn up at a cafe in Perth. Do you know? I love that would be a thing.
Yeah, what's your ambition with Sharron? Or what's Sharon's ambition? Like, who cares what you think, Bonnie? What does Sharron want?
Sharron always thinks she's more famous than she is, and she always just wants to be more famous, which is, you know...
insatiable.
Yeah, and she always idolises the what fame and success is, and probably misreads it. Do you know? She thinks paparazzi are great. They watch your kids for you. They send you photos. Amazing. Like, do you know, just doesn't quite... kind of commits to it so wholeheartedly that it's charming.
Yes.
I'm still figuring her out in a lot of ways because I'm in her all the time. Really, success for me, it's so interesting because before COVID, you know, Gelo was growing, Sharron was growing. We had, you know, this is going to be the next big project, then we're going to do this tour, and then we're going to go over here, and then we're going to go to LA, and Ellen's couch was the goal, and then, you know, get on Ellen's couch, and then, you know, all those big things. And now, for me, obviously Famous Sharron, I want to make her a superstar. I love that. But I also just am so happy to just be working.
Yeah.
So I'm actually just happy to be... You know, if I can earn the money and also have the creativity and be able to make people feel like, if people feel overjoyed being around her, or if she can celebrate people, what a joy.
Exactly.
Like, that is actually really enough. It's bigger than me or anyone, and that's the magic of it.
You've been listening to My Warm Table with Sonia Nolan. In Italian, a tavola calda is a warm and welcoming table where you can share big ideas, friendship, laughter and life. So much happens around the kitchen table, and I wanted to amplify it here in this podcast. My aim is to feed your mind and soul through smart conversations with heart. No topic is off limits, but good table manners rule. I hope you'll join us each week as we set the table for my extraordinary guests who will let you feast on their deep knowledge, life experiences, and wise insights. Let's keep the conversation flowing. Please subscribe to the My Warm Table podcast and share it with your friends and networks. Perhaps if they're new to podcasting, take a moment to show them how to download and subscribe so they don't miss an episode either. I'd also love you to join our community on Facebook. You'll find the group at My Warm Table Podcast. Your support is very much appreciated so that together we can eat, think, and be merry.